All right, guys, welcome back to the Pocket Mads channel. It's Maddie here, and welcome back to Meta Monday, the weekly series where we analyze the Pokemon Pocket metagame and keep you guys up to date on everything going on in the competitive world of Pokemon Pocket. This past weekend was PMPT number 35. Almost 500 players coming out to compete. It's Monday as I record this, and the ranked season just came out, but this was sort of the last online tournament here before the start of the ranked season. Still impressive that almost 500 people came out to compete. I know some people were curious about the live stream for the tournament. Basically, like, Jay was unavailable, who Jay Dankist runs our live stream. Typically, he's like our main caster. He kind of runs the whole show. He was unable to make it for personal reasons, and with that also, and NAIC, like the official Pokemon event this weekend, like there just really wasn't many people available, so we just didn't actually have a live stream, and I apologize for that, but we should be back in this upcoming weekend. The tournament still went on, and we're going to be doing PMPT number 36 this upcoming weekend, but definitely should have a live stream. That's the hope. We'll see. Either way, I'm always busy on the weekends, to be fair, doing a bunch of stuff, so I can never actually run the stream myself. Yeah. Anyway, let's get into the results of the tournament, and link to register for PMPT number 36. The upcoming tournament this weekend is down in the description below. If you want to go register, free to enter, $100 prize pool. This should be, I think, the last tournament. Maybe I'm wrong. Is this? I don't know. I think it is. No, it might not be the last tournament of the season. There might be technically another one. I'm not really sure. Yeah, I think the next set's actually going to release right after PMPT number 37, theoretically. This is on June 27th, or June 20th, and the next one would be June 27th. And I think the next Pokemon Pocket set is supposed to release on the 29th. I think that's how it's working. But anyway, link to register down in the description below. Let's get into the final standings. So here you go. PMPT number 35, Destined Drive. It was Pokemonster from the United States going 12-1-1 with Mega Lucario. So Mega Lucario getting the win here, facing off against Boat Fasting from the United States, 11-2-1. He was playing Miraidon and Magnezone. So Fighting and Lightning fighting its way to Grand Finals. I think Fighting has been in an interesting position. At the end of this video today, we'll break down the metagame data from this tournament. We'll see which decks we're seeing the most play, which decks actually were the most successful. It should be really interesting because I think at this point, the meta is so all over the place. I think this weekend, more than potentially any other weekend of PMPT, was an absolute coin flip. Like literally any deck within sort of the top 10, top 15 could have had a really good chance of winning the tournament. And I think you're going to see that reflected in all of the different archetypes here that are like in the top of the standings, right? If we take a look, not only do we have Lucario and then Miraidon Magnezone in Grand Finals, we had Altaria Greninja in top 4, we had Zoroark in top 4, we had Hydreigon in top 8, Altaria Sleep in top 8, 9th place we go down, we had Blaziken Greninja, Gourgeist Altaria here in 10th place, Sceptile in 12th place, we had Lucario Greninja in 13th place, and of course Manectric down here in 18th place. So Decidueye even in 21st place. We had Iron Valiant in 24th place. So there's so many decks. And I really think that, you know, like if you're playing a remotely strong deck and you got somewhat lucky, you know, in terms of drawing the right cards, and of course you're familiar with the deck and with the game, you probably had a pretty good chance of doing well at this tournament. And this meta, even though it's very diverse, does feel like there's not really a clear and concise, you know, metagame being formulated. It really just kind of feels like, you know, when you go into a particular tournament on any given day, you know, sometimes, you know, certain decks could be seeing more play, and certain decks could hit certain matchups, and you really just have no idea what's going to happen at these tournaments, and it's kind of crazy to think about. I think there's probably a pretty good chance we're going to get a more centralized metagame into next season, but for right now, I mean, there's literally just so many different decks, like anything could be winning. So I mean, these are the final standings. Altaria is still prevalent, like 3 or 4 different Altaria archetypes here high in the standings, whether that's Greninja Altaria, which really hasn't seen a ton of play so far this season or a ton of success, but it is still one of the stronger decks, and Greninja is becoming a bit more popular alongside things like Lucario and Blaziken, as we've seen in previous weeks. So these Greninja archetypes, you know, fundamentally high roll archetypes with their respective Mega Pokemon, doing quite well in this tournament. You know, 3rd place here, Altaria Greninja, Blaziken Greninja in 9th place. But like I said, Altaria here with Sleep Altaria in 8th place, Gourgeist Altaria in 10th place. So, you know, Altaria is still one of the best Pokemon. And I think if we take a look here, the next most successful Pokemon in terms of overall placements was probably Lucario. Definitely a little bit of progression in terms of how people are playing Lucario. So we're going to take a look at that, which is interesting. Grass, definitely less less common than, you know, we kind of suspected it, or we kind of knew it wouldn't be that common. I kind of talked about that on Friday. I like the grass decks. I think Sceptile and Decidueye are both strong. Two of them here in top 21. So, you know, grass is still seeing a little bit of play, but it doesn't feel as dominant right now as maybe it did in previous seasons. And I just think there's just other decks that are non-dark type decks that are still quite good. And I think that Miraidon and Magnezone has a bit of a better opportunity to beat grass, whereas like the previous lightning type decks always struggled into grass. At least that was my feeling with that matchup spread. But anyway, yeah, I mean, that's the final standings. That's the gist of it. Tons of different decks in day 2, but Lucario was very popular, very dominant, and tons of different ways that people were playing Lucario. We had a Guzzlord Koraidon deck, which is insane, in 41st place. So we'll take a look at that maybe later this week. But let's break down the top X decks from this past weekend's tournament, because I am curious, you know, maybe what these particular lists look like. But big shout out to all of these players, some of the best players in the game, hype in the standings, as they always are. You know, we got Najord right here in 6th place. Sana 37 from Japan in 3rd place there with Altaria Greninja. Just so many good players. Numatanale finding its way into 14th place. You know, VIP Leo from Belgium, 10th place here. Is this the highest place in Gourgeist? It is. Yeah, that's very interesting. I really like Gourgeist, but it's never really as popular or as like top end heavy strong as like the other Altaria decks, but I do think it's super consistent. Mega Hassan here from Indonesia, the top sleep player, 9 and 3. Okay. Let's break down the deck lists here. A bit of a long intro. I know people just like to take a look at the deck. So one of the weird progressions with Mega Lucario going into this weekend, or in terms of some of these decks that did well, was Sock, right? So Sock is a very interesting card. What we've seen from Lucario, we've seen a lot of different Lucario's decks, you know, in the last, I don't know how many couple months. I think the standard thing for Lucario was playing like Hitmontop, right? Dealing 20 to the active, 20 to the bench. It's certainly a strong Pokemon. But this particular player here, Pokemonster, was playing one Hitmonlee and then Sock. Now, the difference between Sock and playing something like a Hitmonchan is that it's got a bit more HP at 90 HP. And it has a retreat cost of 2. It's still weak to Psychic, but Sock does 30 damage, quite simply for 1, fighting energy, but the attack's damage isn't affected by any effects on your opponent's active Pokemon. So if they are running any, damage reduction effects, things like a Heavy Helmet or, in general, anything that you might be going up against, this is going to be really relevant. Now, this isn't going to stop your opponent from attaching like a giant cape and having, extra HP. Like if you put a giant cape on like a Chingling, it'll still, not get KO'd by Sock. But what's interesting here, and I think objectively, and some of the explanation I was getting as to why Sock was definitely really, helpful, was that that 90 HP threshold is pretty relevant. I think the ability here to basically live a lot of different attacks and scenarios that you otherwise wouldn't be able to is pretty relevant. And I think that having a Pokemon that can just hit the active for 30 is always going to be pretty good with Arena of Antiquity, in this deck list. Rocky Helmet, meaning if you do live an additional hit, then that's 20 extra damage that's going to go down on the board. So, 80 damage is definitely a tougher breakpoint, I would say, into most other things. Miraidon now needs 5 energies to hit for 100 damage instead of just 4 energies to hit for 80 damage, right? So that's one particular threshold. I think Gourgeist, you might be able to live a hit from Gourgeist. Does Gourgeist deal 70? I think you're still getting KO'd by Gourgeist. What other 80, Manectric hits for 80, right? If they haven't taken any prizes. So there's definitely some explanations for it. I think at the end of the day, 90 is just better than 80, and the retreat cost probably doesn't matter that much. We're not running a Leaf in this deck, we're playing an X speed, but you're going to attach an energy and just attack with Sock if it's in the active anyway, you know what I mean? So I do think that this card is kind of an upgrade, honestly. And it's just a Pokemon that is, going to sit in the active and just do something in the meantime for us to kind of set up Mega Lucario here. And we have one of each Riolu, we have Sabrina, we have Cyrus, PCL, 1 Copycat, and 2 Research. So not playing double Copycat here. 1 Karina, 1 Antiquity, 1 Lucky Ice Pop, 1 double Rocky Helmet, and then 1 X Speed. So lots of, 1-ofs in this deck. But I mean, Lucario is Lucario, right? And if we take a look at his matchups here, we see he did double Miraidon Magnezone, right? In Top Cut. He actually beat, this matchup here in Top 64 to beat Altaria Espeon in this first round of Top Cut was really important, right? Because this player here that got first place at the tournament this weekend, if he just lost in this first or top, 64 matchup into Mega Altaria, then it would have been a completely different, matchup. You know what I mean? It would have been a completely different bracket. So it's just kind of crazy that this one matchup, although unlikely, he ended up getting the win. And then from there, beat 3 different Greninja decks, including Altaria Altaria Greninja, which is kind of crazy. But I think it does speak to the overall consistency of playing, a Mega Lucario deck like this. I mean, at the end of the day, Riolu isn't a terrible Pokemon to lead off with, but we have X-Speed if we wanted to retreat into Hitmonlee, and we have Sock. So I think at the end of the day, like just playing 4 basic Pokemon, 2 of them you really want to lead off in the active spot. It's just a really straightforward deck, and I think that, Lucario can deal so much damage, in the late game that theoretically it has a good matchup into any, or a winnable matchup into any Mega Pokemon, right? Because things like Altaria, you can 1-hit KO them. Manectric, you can 1-hit KO. Things like Zoroark, I mean, Absol's another example. Basically, all of these relevant Pokemon seeing play, can get 1-hit KO'd by Lucario, and I think that's a big benefit to it. Let's take a look actually quickly. I want to skip down to Najord's deck and take a look at his list to see if it is, in fact, the same, and I think it is. I think this is the same list. So, maybe the Sock is just a really big advantage. I'm kind of curious why that might be. Also, like, you're not, it's 90 damage, right? So in any scenario where 80 damage KOs you, like, you're not getting KO'd, and that can be useful for sleep as well, right? Because it's Darkrai deals damage like on tiers of 20, although that is interesting though, because Igglybuff does it on tiers of 10, so I don't really know. Like, they're never able to hit for 80 in one turn, but maybe with weakness, I don't know. With Espeon, maybe there's something going on with Espeon and Darkrai. Maybe you live an attack from Espeon and Darkrai. This is curious. I want to take a look at Najord's matchups as well, who just ended up hitting double Manectric and Sceptile before losing to this same Altaria Greninja player. So, you know what? Listen, I think Lucario is strong. Maybe this was a good weekend for it. We'll take a look at the metagame data at the end of the tournament to see maybe why Lucario was so effective, because there's a lot of Lucarios in day 2, and they all did pretty well. It looks like the most popular version might have been Lucario Greninja, which, as we know, is sort of just a high roll archetype. But, I mean, Lucario is Lucario, so kind of cool. Is this... I'm trying to remember when the last time Lucario won a PMPT tournament. Has it won one? Maybe last season or the season previously. I don't remember. I'm trying to think. When did Lucario come out? I don't know if Lucario's won a tournament. I think Sceptile, it might have won, because like when Lucario and Sceptile came out, I think Sceptile won back-to-back first tournaments of that season. So interesting. This might be one of the first, at least like a pure Lucario. I don't remember. I should probably remember that, but we've had so many tournaments, it's hard to remember. Anyway, shout out to Pokemonster. Love to see it. And shout out to Lucario for having a great run this weekend. Boat Fasting, Miraidon, and Magnezone. Let's take a look here. This is going to be kind of the newer version with Zero Aura, which we did talk about on Friday. A lot of people just cutting Oricorio from their decks, quite frankly. A lot of, I guess, the other decks in the game can kind of just deal with Oricorio. It's not really providing the same value as something like a Zero Aura, which is not only more aggressive, has a bit more HP, can still hit for 50, and at the end of the day generates additional energies, which is going to be very, very helpful for playing a Miraidon-based deck. And we're playing 1 Turo in here, but double Miraidon. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the upside to Miraidon is that if you do have a second Miraidon and you lead with it, it's totally fine, because you can actually just go from a Miraidon into another Miraidon without having to retreat or anything. So, I think that Zero Aura and Miraidon has been relevant ever since it came out, but it was weird. Like, Miraidon was kind of split between these Magnezone decks or like these Turbo Zero Aura decks, and I think somebody at some point was like, why don't we just do it all together and be very effective? And I think it is. I do think that this sort of maximum energy output Miraidon EX archetype is probably like one of the stronger decks in the game. Might have been a big reason, in fact, why Lucario ended up being so good, I guess, this weekend. Maybe just because Miraidon kind of was that primary contender, and Lucario just happened to have a good matchup into this particular strategy. One Sabrina, one Cyrus. We got a Lycia in here just to kind of grab those Magnemites. So 1 Lycia with double Pokeballs, and then we have double Copycat, double Research. So lots of consistency cards with this deck, right? This is just a bunch of draw supporters with double Pokeball in here, all of our Pokemon. We're not actually playing a Clemont, which is interesting. But, maybe the double Copycat and whatever, it's just enough to draw those Pokemon. Who knows? I also like the lead-off consistency with this deck a bit more with the double Zero Aura. It feels like most of the time, no matter kind of what the board state is in the first couple of turns, you can feel pretty good about that, I do like it. I think Zero Aura is a really, really good card with Miraidon. Sana, 37 from Japan, 11-2. Altaria Greninja. This is going to be Chingling, Lucky Egg. So, this is a deck that I'm always so afraid of. I just never really want it to kind of pop off and become one of the more mainstream decks. It's certainly popular. Greninja is really good in basically any deck. Like this strategy can be basically employed however you want to, whether it's with Blaziken, although the Blaziken deck doesn't play Chingling, but I believe the Lucario Greninja decks do play Chingling. So Greninja and Chingling have been going together extremely well. Chingling slows the game down early, stops your opponent from getting their rare candy Pokemons, potentially their own Greninjas out, and then Greninja, on our side, we just get it set up, and then we kind of have a lot of extra damage and a lot of extra control, right? With Water Shuriken and Cyrus on the board. And Mega Altaria, just a super easy to play Mega Pokemon. It's a super consistent, decent amount of HP, decent amount of damage, and we all know what Altaria does. The Lucky Egg Chingling stuff does feel kind of bad when you're playing against a deck like this. Luckily, if you're able to KO Chingling through damage that's not a direct attack, it will not activate the Lucky Egg, and then from there, your opponent won't get to draw all of those cards. And as we know, there are some types of ways in the game to take KOs without just attacking. So that's one way to kind of work around the strategy. But if you don't have a workaround, it feels really bad to just get hit with Chingling item lock for a couple of turns, give your opponent, 12 cards after taking those KOs, and then having to deal with like double Greninja Altaria at the end of the game. And that's why they can get away with one Mega Altaria, which you might think is less consistent, and maybe it is. But Altaria Greninja was never really a deck about consistency. So what scares me here is that Lucky Egg is kind of adding that extra consistency. But, this is a deck that's going to be around for quite some time. I think Altaria Greninja always has the potential to win. When you play up against it, you're just constantly afraid that they're going to draw exactly what they need. And I guess they do it more so now with Lucky Egg. But let's take a look at flip side from Mexico. Our highest placing Zoroark, and the next is Dens here in 16th place. Zoroark outperforming Hydreigon. Technically, Lordy playing Hydreigon was 5th place. Flip side, even though they had virtually the same record, flip side made it into top 4. And, Zoroark catching some steam. It's certainly one of the more popular decks in the game. I personally always liked Zoroark more than Hydreigon, and I'm glad that we do have kind of an alternate dark type deck that can utilize a lot of the same functionality, a lot of the same like dark archetype. As Hydreigon, it just kind of feels a little bit more ethical when you play it. Very aggressive, just kind of right in your face. It's less powerful, but more consistent, and I think that that's a really nice middle ground for a deck like this. Less and less grass, to be fair, and these dark type decks, I think Hydreigon was a deck that I recommended for ranked just because it's a bit more of a high roll deck, but Zoroark more consistent. It's kind of like I'm trying to think what's the difference here. I'm trying to make the comparison, but at the end of the day, they're basically kind of like, if you think about them as like the same deck, but Zoroark's just the more consistent version, where Hydreigon's more of like the high roll version. High roll decks, always have the potential to be a little bit stronger and do a little bit better. But they're just sort of less often going to be as good as you want them to be. I like Zoroark. I really do. I think this is just a really quality Pokemon, and I think Pokemon Pocket should release more of these types of Pokemon. These non-Mega EX cards that aren't necessarily like overwhelmingly, ridiculous. They're just really nice, really consistent, really strong. There was a time when we got like Zoroark and we got Mega Manectric, and it just felt like they were giving us really consistent cards, low energy cost cards that felt good to play because you could get them up and running really early, and they were able to kind of lead into the late game a little bit easier. So I really like Zoroark, and I know a couple other Pocket creators really do like this deck list, and honestly, like, it is probably one of my favorite decks in the game, just in terms of its overall flow. And I don't really think many people are changing how you play Zoroark. Still one Darkrai, one Absol, and one Bombardier. And to me, that's just a really great lineup. You have a lot of tools available. You could go Zoroark into Mega Absol, or you could go, Zoroark into a Darkrai. Like, depending on what you have available to you, you're always able to do something. And I think that's really good. Darkrai EX continues to be one of the best Pokemon in Pokemon Pocket, just because the Nightmare Aura effect is so strong. It's just so good. It's so being able to just attach an energy and deal 20 damage is absurdly strong. And when you combine it with Rocky Helmet, it's so good. Shout out to Darkrai. But let's take a look at Lordy's deck here. 5th place, Hydreigon, and this is going to be with Roaring Moon, right? So Zoroark likes to play Darkrai EX because you have those additional energy attachments. Hydreigon has it kind of less often, and even if you do, you're definitely going to want to commit that energy to a Mega Absol, because Hydreigon plays around the prize math thing a little bit more so than Zoroark, where, the whole concept of this deck, and sometimes if you do get into Mega Absol a little bit too early, sometimes you can win games that way, especially like if you go second, but the core concept of this deck is to force your opponent to have to deal with double Hydreigon, and then at the end of the game, a Mega Absol, right? Where Zoroark, you can be a little bit more flexible in terms of which Pokemon you're kind of utilizing. So that's why we don't play Darkrai in this deck, because it would mess up the prize math a little bit too much. Roaring Moon here, it's seeing play in Hydreigon, and I don't hate it. It's not a deck that I've really tested out myself a ton. I just don't really play Hydreigon, but Roaring Moon is an interesting card. the Iron Valiant and Roaring Moon, I guess, additions to the metagame from this Paradox Drive set are very interesting. You know, this set had so many really interesting cards that were not bad, but not, you know, incredibly overpowered or broken at first glance, but have been seeing a ton of play and a ton of success, you know, this entire season. So it's a really interesting example. This deck list only playing one Lucky Ice Pop though, and one PCL. So I find that to be interesting, right? So, you know, there's a lot of sleep decks seeing play. So maybe, you know, playing a PCL instead of just double Lucky Ice Pops does make sense. Still double Rocky Helmet. We're probably going to see that for quite some time, unless a better option comes out. Most people just playing Bombardier Rocky Helmet instead of Nihilego Poison Barb, because the retreat action from Bombardier is just really valuable, and especially if you're playing Roaring Moon, but it's really valuable. So I think people are kind of trading off that additional damage you would be able to get from Poison Barb Nihilego to just be a little bit more consistent, and then you just play Rocky Helmets. You know, it's almost just as good. But anyway, Hydreigon and Zoroark right next to each other in the standings, 4th and 5th place. Are we surprised? Maybe we shouldn't be surprised. 7th place, I play Pokemans, also playing Miraidon and Magnezone. And guess what? It's the same deck, I believe. I think it's the exact same deck. We might be there might be one different card here. I don't know. I kind of forget. Let's see here. We just pulled it up. Where is it? Right here. Yeah, it's the same deck. Okay. I mean, that's what I suspected. Yeah, I just think that this is sort of the final form of these Miraidon Magnezone decks. We say that, but like next season, they're just going to give us another new lightning type card that buffs this entire thing. They like to keep archetypes going. They've done it with Suicune, and they're doing it with Magnezone, and so it's just sort of an interesting thing. I wonder what else they'll do that with. I'm kind of afraid that they do that with Hydreigon. I don't really want... I guess they've already done it with Hydreigon, with Bombardier and Roaring Moon. What else will they continue to update, I wonder? Probably Magnezone. We're probably going to get more Magnezone buffs next season. I'm really curious to see what they come out with. Yeah, it's the same deck, and we know it's good. I think Zeraora, rather, definitely kind of puts that deck over the edge a little bit. Mega Hassan in 8th place. Let's take a look here. This might be the last deck we cover in this video, just the top 8 different decks, and then what we'll do is we'll break down the metagame data. I don't want this video to be too long, and we'll be back in a couple of days to highlight some of the other decks, the non-meta decks that did well this weekend. So, Mega Hassan here was playing Sleep Altaria, and this is, I think, exactly what we expect out of Sleep Altaria. I haven't really talked about this deck very much, at least in high reverence. I don't really think many people are super happy about the sleep stuff, and to be fair, it hasn't really been extraordinarily dominant to any degree this season. It's been a very average. It's been a very average deck, which I think is fine. You know, it doesn't, and nothing has to ever be like tier 0. You know, we haven't really had a tier 0 deck since last Hydreigon season when it was super dominant. That was like 3 or 4 seasons ago. Sleep Altaria is a fine deck. I'm actually really curious to see the win rates and then the performances of all of the decks this weekend. I think it's still really good. I mean, it's obviously like a top tier deck, but I don't really remember the last time a Sleep won a PMPT tournament. I don't know if it ever has, actually. Maybe before we got Espeon, it maybe won a tournament. I don't remember. But Igglybuff Darkrai is really strong. And yeah, I mean, there we go. It's funny because all of the other decks that we showcased in this video, I'm pretty sure we're running PCL. Like, I'm pretty certain, like, there's a Pokemon Center Lady in this deck. There's one in this deck list here. So not in Magnezone. So Magnezone and Miraidon wasn't running PCL, which probably is fine because you just have Miraidon to kind of swap in and out through the sleep anyway. So you have that pivoting, so you don't really need it. Greninja and Altaria was not running Pokemon Center Lady. So that is also interesting, but I guess the whole concept there is sacking the Chinglings. I wonder though, because like if Altaria gets caught into sleep, like that's probably going to be pretty detrimental. Zoroark was playing Pokemon Center Lady, and then Hydreigon was playing Pokemon Center Lady. So most of the decks that we highlighted in top 8 here were also playing Pokemon Center Lady. I think it makes sense with sleep, you know, but there's also Sceptile and Blaziken running around too, you know. Okay. So let's break down the metagame data. Let's do that. Let's break it down. These were the final standings. Again, shout out to all of these players. Thank you guys for participating. Sorry there was no live stream, but let's break down this metagame data because I am genuinely curious, like what decks people are playing. So let's see. Okay. So wow, this is super spread out. This is crazy. Wow. All right. So the most played deck of the tournament was Miraidon Magnezone, but that's only less than 8% of the tournament, and it did have effectively a 50-50 record, nothing incredible there. The next most played deck also at about 7.5% meta share, 37 and 36 players. That's crazy that not one deck was even above 8% meta share. That's absurd. I don't know if we've ever seen that. Hydreigon, which also really struggled, in fact, went 82 and 111, so that's only a 42% win rate. So Hydreigon really not doing that well this weekend, although a lot of people did play it, which is interesting because there's not that much grass seeing play, but maybe Lucario was able to get the win here because Lucario Greninja, the third most played deck, also about 7.5% of the meta share, went 116 to 94, which is almost a 55% win rate. So Lucario doing extremely well, probably because this archetype is just in general, I would say, well positioned in the Miraidon Magnezone stuff. Blaziken Greninja was the fourth most played deck, but did not do very well. 41% win rate. That's 63 to 87. That's tough. And Sleep Altaria did do well, in fact. So maybe the rise in Lucario, and I guess just the fact that there's less grass means that Sleep Altaria was actually a pretty well-positioned deck this weekend. 95 to 83. Look at all these decks. So like the most played deck here being under 8% meta share, and then all the way down here, like if we go down to, I don't even know, you have to go down to Meowscarada to find a deck that was less than 2% of the meta share. Like look at the spread here is insane. Absolutely incredible. Zoroark did very well though, 84 to 59. This might be the best performance of the weekend. Is Zoroark here. A smaller sample size, 5% of the tournament, but 84-59 is an incredible record. Nothing else really even comes close. Sceptile about 50-50. Suicune struggled a bit, 32 and 43. That makes sense. Lots of Miraidon Magnezone seeing play, as well as Manectric, which in fact still did well. Only 12 people playing it, but going 32 and 27. Fighting him on top, Lucario went about 50-50. Where was that Lucario version? Just the straight Lucario version? I guess not many people played it. Oh no, right here. Yeah, 93 and 69. So yeah, a really great weekend for Lucario. This might have been the best Lucario weekend we've ever seen at BNPT, to be honest with you. So shout out to Lucario. I guess that kind of makes sense. If you just look at the decks that we're seeing play. Lots of lightning, less grass, and there you go. What else kind of stood out here? Charizard struggled. Great Tusk going 50-50, just like we expected to. Shout out to Great Tusk. Actually, okay, so the 5 people played Altaria Greninja and went 33 and 13, which is a 70% win rate. That's crazy. That might be the highest win rate we've ever seen out of a deck. Although one Decidueye went 8 and 2, but yeah, I mean, out of any deck that had 5 or more players, this was an absolutely phenomenal weekend here. So Altaria Greninja probably capitalizing on all of those fighting type decks. And then of course, down here, Zoroark just doing extremely well. So really cool to see. Dark Greninja went 23 and 16 as well. So shout out to Dark Greninja. Yeah, guys, lots of other 1-ups here. So that's, that data is not as particularly useful. Yeah, Lucario Greninja was by far the most popular deck in day 2. For day 2, though, it went 15 and 14. Zoroark went 13 and 9. Sleep Altaria went 15 and 9. Mega Lucario, that version with Sock that we saw there at the top of the standings, 16 and 5. And then Miraidon Magnezone went 15 and 6 as well. So there might be some consolidation happening at the top of the metagame. I mean, certain archetypes seem very dominant, but again, like it's going to change from week to week, just depending on which decks are seeing more play. And to be honest, like the results this weekend aren't going to give us a whole lot other than just sort of showing us, just a quick snapshot in the history of the season, even though things are going to be very different in just a few days from now. But a very, very cool tournament. Very cool results. I think everybody understands this metagame is super spread out. This seemed to be definitely like a Lucario kind of Zoroark type of a weekend, but Miraidon Magnezone still a really high quality deck. And I think the way people are playing Altaria is shifting and should be shifting. I think Greninja is probably actually like one of the better ways to play it. If you're going to be playing a high roll version, why play Sleep and get hard countered by certain things? Like just play Greninja Altaria, and if not, just play the Gourgeist Altaria version, which as we know is very consistent. Grass not seeing that much play. Hopefully it sees a bit more play, but honestly, like it doesn't really have like a really hard position into anything in the metagame right now. And Fire, I guess, is at this point, if we take a look here, the only Fire type deck really seeing play is Blaziken Greninja, which did not do very well, coincidentally. So perhaps another fraudulent season for Blaziken. Tough to see. Tough to see that. But anyway, that's the video, guys. That's Meta Monday. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to stay tuned. And don't forget to register for PMPT number 36. This upcoming weekend. Link to register down in the description below. We'll be back in a couple of days. Hopefully we have the live stream this weekend. Stay updated in the Discord for more information. I'll let you guys know once I know what's going on. It's gonna, hopefully it's a different weekend. This past weekend was definitely a hard thing for availability. I think a lot of people are busy, quite frankly, which is fine. You know, it happens sometimes. But shout out to the judges and everybody that actually did help make this tournament happen. Yeah, we'll keep them going. We'll keep them going, hopefully. But yeah, I mean, shout out to Ranked. Ranked is going on right now, so you know, we'll see how the Ranked season plays out. But yeah, all right, we'll see you guys soon. Peace out. Have a good one. We'll see you guys later.